Okay, assalamu alaikum. As you can see that we still at the same chapter. We haven't finished yet. Today we have to look at the legal status of the company, legal status or corporation. If we look at this, we have to study the framework, legal framework. How can we establish a company? How this company can run? How can we manage it? How can we govern it? Such framework, legal framework, which is the body of law, which we call it company law, we call it corporation law, we call it corporate law. It's a law which grants the company its own status. Status of the company as a person, can act, can have its own name. A person can sign contracts, can involve in many activities. This person, this is a legal person. Or we call it sometimes fictional or fictitious person or legal person. He or she, as a company, that legal person will be able to make many activities like a human being. Like a human being, they can, from a legal point of view, this status exists. The status of the company or corporation exists as a requirement of the legal framework, as a requirement of the law itself, which is the company law. So by having this personality or this fictitious or fictional person and identity and name of the company would be responsible, would be able to act, would be able to make an activity. The company can have the full and last liability. This will be separate from the liabilities of the shareholders. Now, by having this personality, the company or corporation would have the ability to what? Own property, sign binding contracts, pay taxes, and this is because, and so on and so forth. This is because the company has its own name, and this name or this personality of the company is completely separate from your own personalities as shareholders. Shareholders, we call them sometimes members. It depends on the type of the company. Some of them are profit, some of them non-profit. We will look at this on due time once we come to that point. Some companies are profit, making money, making business and making or achieving some money. They have shareholders. Those companies have shareholders. But when the company is non-profit company, it does not make a profit, does not have the intention to make money. Such company would not have shareholders, does not have a stock. It has only members. Those members, they have the ability to vote. We will look at that in due time. They can vote, they have their own personality, they are separate from the company itself. In any way, such legal personality, as you can see, this legal personality of the company, it has two economic implications. تضمينات, تأثيرات. Two economic effects, which number one is need somebody to read it for. Let's start with number two. Go on.
Second, corporate assets cannot be withdrawn by the shareholders, nor can be the assets of the firm be taken by personal creditor of its shareholders.
Despite the fact that we as shareholders, we can establish a company, corporation, we can establish it, and will be the money, will be our shares. But at the end of the day, this company would have its own assets, ممتلكات. The company would have its own money, structure, furniture, machines, everything is for the company. Then we, as shareholders, we cannot take it. We cannot use it for our own private life here. Shareholders, nor here, they cannot use the assets. They cannot withdraw those assets because they belong not to the shareholders anymore. They belong to the company itself. So the company have its own name, personality, can act, can do business, and the company have the assets and the structure and everything in which shareholders cannot take it, cannot use these assets for their own benefit, and they cannot pay. If I was a shareholder, I will not be able to pay my creditor, my personal creditor from my company, because the company itself has its own name and money and private life separate from the shareholders. That's one. Number two, go on.
It grants creditors priority over the corporate assets upon liquidation.
Look at the time of liquidation. Time of liquidation when we dissolve the company. When the company has an end, does not stand anymore, finished. Life of that company has completely finished. We dissolve it, we liquidate it. Then at this minute, at this time, who comes first? We as shareholders or the creditors? They come first. First of all, we have to pay them, we have to pay the creditors their own money, and what left behind, which is we call it residual interest. We have to look at it after a few slides. It's called residual interest. ما تبقى. This will be divided between shareholders. So we have priority, أولوية, and this is for not for shareholders, but it's for creditors. Even if we don't have money left behind, if we have nothing left behind for us as shareholders, that's fine. We have to pay the money fully, as much as we can pay. The creditors will be good. And if we don't have anything left behind for shareholders, then this is the case, and it's a legal matter, and then we will not be able to get anything. Now, for legal status itself, legal status has two main implications, including here. Number one is limited liability, and number two is perpetual lifetime. Let's start first with limited liability, and I guess that we had this point before. I did explain it many times, but we have to focus somehow in details on this point. What does it mean? What does it mean, limited liability in a corporation? Companies, most of them nowadays, they have limited liability, but there's some types who have unlimited liability. For this type, for the largest in size corporation, it has all the time they're having limited liability. Limited liability. By this here, as you can see, that shareholders, they have the limited liability. It's not for the corporation, because some people are still mixing, thinking that limited liability is connected with the company, with the corporation. It's not. It's with you, with the shareholders. Shareholders, I have limited liability. I will not lose money more than I invest. I don't care about the money. The life expectation of the company itself, as much as I do care about my money, my shares, and my profit. And this is the case. So shareholders will not be liable for the corporation's debt. What debt? Dune. They will not be. And even not only debts and obligations. The company have commitments. So have some commitment. Those commitments are connected to the company, to the corporation, not the shareholders. No. Shareholders only pay the money because they have the intention to make a profit. But at the end of the day, if the company loses, they have the maximum loss, and they will not take that risk. It's not the high risk. Upon this point, which is the limited liability, you can have four main results. You can expect any one of them to be a question like this in the exam, true or false. Expect anyone to be a point in the exam. Number one is potential loss. Potential loss. What do you think? The potential in the future prospect, how much can we lose? We can. It's a possibility. If you invest money, you might win and you might lose. This is business. If it's a win-win situation, all the time you win, all the time you gain money, this is not a business. But in business, you can expect both to win or to lose. But in most cases, people win money, they achieve a profit, but sometimes they lose. Now, how much you as a shareholder can lose as a potential loss?
The loss in potential losses doesn't exceed the amount that you invest in the company.
Does not exceed the money you invest, the amount of money. Yeah. Easy. The amount of money we invest as shareholders, for individual shareholder, I can invest money, you can invest money, but then we have a potential loss which is going to be the maximum loss. It will be the amount of money we invested. We will not be asked for more than we invested. No. I can lose as a shareholder half of my money, maybe 20%, maybe 55%, but the maximum I can lose 100% of my what? Shares. Each share is equal to a unit of money. If you invested £20,000 and you bought by this, you bought 200 shares. 2,000 shares. Because each share costs £10, then the maximum you can lose is the whole amount of money you invested. The maximum you can lose is the amount of shares you have invested. So this is the maximum. No one can ask you to pay more than you have paid at the beginning for this company, your shares. Fine, clear? Second point is a little bit difficult. It have some trick points. Anonymous trading. Because we have limited liability, we do have anonymous. What's anonymous? Anonymous, something unknown. Anonymous trading. Anonymous, it means that you can buy, you can sell shares anytime you like. We can open the door for anyone to join the company or to leave the company. I can get 50% of the shares, I can get 5%, I can get only less than 1% of the shares. I can invest £20,000, I can invest £2 million. I can buy shares, I can sell shares. So the shares, assume, they can be transferred from one to another. Now, and no one can ask, no one can take the permission. Like if you want to sell your shares, are you going to take permission from the board of management or directors? No. That's your money. It's your life. You can invest more. You can sell some of your anonymous trading. You have the freedom to buy shares and to sell shares with no restrictions. But we do have sometimes, because of this, we do have sometimes some restrictions, especially from creditors. Like, I need somebody to read this, a little bit difficult and a tricky point without limit. Ayad?
Without limit liability, a creditor would not likely allow any share to be sold to a buyer of least equivalent credit, worth this as possible.
Okay, now, do you get the point? Do you understand it? Complicated, difficult. Can simplify it in this. Sometimes, not sometimes, most of the time, if we have creditors, those creditors, da'inin, they would guarantee their money. If I was a shareholder, and you are a shareholder, and we invested money, but this money has been taken from the bank as a loan, or from any building society, any financial society, we invested. This bank, which we have lent the money from, would have some guarantees that his money will be paid back. How can I pay the money back to the bank without the bank having guarantees? Now, the guarantee can be sometimes, because of the limited liability, I can sell my shares at any time I like. How much it costs each share? If the share costs £10, how much usually I supposed to sell it for? £10. For the same amount of money as in the market. It's the value of the market. If the share costs £10, we're supposed to sell it for £10. And in this case here, sometimes people cheat. They deceive others. They deceive the company. What they do, they can sell the shares for less than the amount of money, or they can sell for more than the amount of money. I mean, this can be sometimes kind of deception. It depends, because people know that, like, I'm not going to pay anyway. no one can ask me anyway, then I would sell my shares for less than the amount of money, and then I can escape. I can leave the company. Now, if I was a debtor, Madin, a shareholder, debtor, Madin, and we have the bank who is the creditor. Now, the bank or any creditor would have to guarantee their own money by not allowing the shareholder to sell any share without consulting the creditor. You have to consult them. You have to take permission, because you're not supposed to sell any share less than the amount of money supposed to sell, which is supposed to be here at the seller, as the seller can do at any time using the value of the market. You're not supposed to sell any share for less than the amount of money you're supposed to do, which is the value, the market value. Do you get it? Why shouldn't we do this? Because we have to guarantee the bank's money. I know it's not easy. Look at it again. Okay, I was in debt for £10,000, which I've taken from the bank to buy shares. I invested money, but this money I invested in the company, I've taken them from the bank and I bought shares. Now, some people, what they do, like, they take the money from the bank, they want to cheat. They just want to take the cash. Because the bank usually would buy you. The bank will not give you the money in cash. Most likely, they will not give you the money in cash. They say, what do you want to buy? Do you want to buy a house? Do you want to buy shares? You can. We're going to buy that for you. If the bank buy me shares, which cost £500,000, then I would take the money in cash. How can I take the money in cash? I can sell my shares, take the money in cash, and I can run away. And some people did that. They ask the bank to pay the money to buy a house, to buy anything. Then they sell, they take the cash, and then they run away. Then the bank would make sure that you will not be able to do this, as would have guarantees. The guarantee that you will not, they're going to have restrictions, في قيود, upon you in that company, that this person will not sell any of his shares less than the amount of money which is equivalent to that share. And at the same time, they would have to guarantee that the bank is watching over. Despite the fact that we have anonymous trading, usually in usual situation, everyone can sell, can buy. But in some cases, you cannot without the permission, because we have limited liability here. And because of the limited liability to the shareholder, then no one can ask them. Because, well, if the company collapses, the company become bankrupt, then the shareholder would escape with money and no one would ask him nothing, despite he was cheating. Then we have to have a system in which we can monitor, we can inspect, we can look after each one individual who was in that situation. I mean, if it was your money, it's fine. You can sell for the amount of money you like. You can sell your shares for anything you like, for nothing, for free. But because this is not, this is a situation in which the seller selling his shares and he was in debt, then despite the fact we have anonymous trading and we have a freedom, we have to watch that person, because he has to pay somebody else. He has to pay the bank. He's got to pay the amount of money which we have to expect, which is equivalent to the amount of money in the market. Fine? Good? Third point, raising fund. In such companies, we can raise more money. If it's a partnership, we have 5 people, 6, 2, 3. We have a small number of shareholders. We call them even. We call them what? What we call them? In a company, we call them shareholders. Okay. In partnership, what they call? No, we call them partners. شركاء. In partnership, we call the members partners. In some companies, we call them members. So we have 3 different ways. If it's a corporation or limited liability company, we call it shareholders. If it's a partnership, we say partners. If it's non-profit company, members. Now, this time, because we have anonymous trading and we have a freedom to sell and buy anytime we like, and because we have limited liability, we can raise fund. The doors are open Anyone can invest his money in such type of company. By this year, we can increase the amount of money, the stock, the owners. We can increase the number of shareholders. We can have 1,000 shareholders. But some companies today, they have millions of shareholders. And this is what the time they can increase. And they can increase the amount of money they invested. So, such time we can increase the amount of money we invest, we can make more profit. And number four,
Limited liability reduces the amount that shareholders can lose in the company. This in turn greatly reduces the risk for the future.
Okay, number four, number one are so connected, as you can see. Number one, talking about the potential loss, about the risk. Some companies, you can take the risk. If it's a partnership, you can take the full risk, unlimited liability. But in this type here, no, we can reduce it. نقلل. The amount of money we lose, we can reduce it. We can reduce the risk for the potential shareholders, and this would encourage more people to invest money in such entities. Okay, the next point, the second implication of the legal status. Legal status has two main implications. Number one was limited liability. Number two is perpetual lifetime. Perpetual life expectation, stability, unbounded potential accumulation here, duration. Sorry. The company was established. It has a name, identity, structure, building might be, assets, life, commitment, everything as you can have as a human being. Maybe even more. That's in terms of legal commitment, legal activities. The company can have more than we can have sometimes. And here, assets and structure of the corporation exist beyond lifetime of any of its shareholders. The assets and the company, its own structure, the building and everything of that company can live beyond our expectations. We cannot know exactly how many years that company can live. It can live for a few years, and it can live for hundreds of years. As we have some companies, Hudson Bay Company, we had it last time. How old was it? 300 years? 300 years. One of the oldest companies in the world. Some companies can even live more than that. Can live for a long time. Anyway, perpetual lifetime, it means shareholders can pass away, they can die, they can withdraw, they can leave, but the company can stay. What does it mean, this to you? Imagine, just look at building company which has been existed for 200 years. What do you think? Money, how much would it be? Stability, strength, power, authority. How can you imagine such an entity? No? Strength. Yes. Yes.
Investors, high profit and high investment.
Okay. Imagine yourself that today, as a student, in 10 years' time, you might have your own small company. You should invest £10,000 only. £10,000. After 50 years, how much you're going to have as individual? Maybe £500,000. Maybe £50,000. But in all ways, most likely, the money you have will increase every day. Everything you're going to have is going to be increase, and even you're going to have more stability. You will know your business well. You can understand it. You can know exactly how to deal with customers, how to make money. With the time, you can have more stability in that place. You can know everything in the market. Stability, it's something important. And accumulation of capital. Accumulation, tarakum, of capital. This would mean that we have more money available for investment. More money. Not only by the same shareholders, but even by having newcomers, new shareholders, who can join such an entity, and this would mean a longer life and more stability, and this would mean perpetual lifetime. perpetual lifetime, which is mean practically that we have unbounded here. Unbounded. What does it mean unbounded? Potential duration. Just highlight it. When we say the company have unbounded potential duration. What's bound? مقيد. محدود. Unbound. غير محدود. Open. Unbound potential duration. المدة. We cannot know. We have no idea. We cannot expect how long the company can live. This would make it difficult for us to be able to understand the future and the expectation and what we would have. If we have such point, imagining one of the companies having that life expectations, well, this means this company staying with the time can be more strong, have more power, and the same company would have the authority to act, to exist, to collect money, and we have all of this, what we call it accumulation, تراكم, accumulation, more money, power, wealth, strength, identity, and can improve its own name as one of the best companies in the market. Good. With this, what do you think? Do you think that companies can live forever? Can't we have an end? Can we have an end for such companies? How can we have an end? It depends on the market. Do you have a company? If you have a company, how can you end it? How can you dissolve it? Can you? How? Insolvency, bankruptcy, yeah. What else? You think it's easy to dissolve a company? You see, look, in theory here, can you read it for me?
In theory, a corporation can have its
charter, ميثاق يعني.
revoked
What does it mean revoke? إبطال. Yep.
at any time, putting an end to its existence as a legal entity.
Okay, hold on. Now, in theory, it's not the same like in practice. In theory, you can any time you can end. You can say, well, we would like to end the life of this company. We want to close it down. We want to revoke it. We want to have a bankruptcy. It's easy to say. But when it comes to practice, the solution is not something easy. Practice, because we have many commitments, especially with corporations. They have money invested in the market. They have laborers. They have employees, management, customers. How can you close it down? Easy? It's not. If you close one company down in this size, it means you have cut all the commitment and obligations and the responsibilities of such companies, and it would be really complicated. Despite this, we can have a dissolution. Dissolution حل by two ways here, and one can just to complete it. Go on.
However, as a legal entity, however, in practice, the solution only occurs for a corporation that requests its own firm to meet.
Two ways. Number one is if the corporation itself requests it. If the company wants to have a dissolution, we cannot stop them. Company want to have an end. Shareholders want to dismantle such company. Now, people who invested the money, they want to take their money and they want to close that company. Now, this is number one. Number two is if the company itself failed to meet its own annual filing requirement, and this means most likely bankruptcy. Company does not pay its own commitment. Company cannot meet the requirements. It means the company would be in a dire situation, صعب, difficult situation. Then here we can have an end for that company. So in any way, companies will not live forever. They can have an end like a human being, like the states, like any institute. No one can live forever. Everyone would pass away at the end. Look at the ownership with such size of companies, corporations, ownership and control. Who own it? Who control it? Do you think that the same people who own the company can control it? Why not? Yes or no? Okay, who owns corporations and who controls them? Shareholders. Okay, go on.
Control the board of directors.
Yes. We have two types actually. Some of them profit, and the second type is non-profit. Some countries they call them stock and non-stock. It's the same anyway, practically the same. Stock, which is the, what do you call that stock in Arabic? Asum. And companies who have a stock, we call the members stockholders. Or we call them sometimes shareholders. So you can say stockholder or shareholder. Did you study that?
Yes.
Good. So for profit corporations, we have voters. Those voters here are the shareholders. If it's non-profit, non-stock, we don't have shareholders. We don't have stockholders. What we have? Members. Not partners. We call them members. They can vote as well, can't they? We'll look at the next slide. How can we have the vote? How can we? But anyway, we'll look at the ownership. Profit corporations, we have voters hold shares. Everyone have some shares. And they are called shareholders or stockholders. For non-profit, in some places, like in the States, they call them stockholders. They call them stock and non-stock corporations. Stock and non-stock, it means the stock company have shares, have money invested, have goods, items. Those are the stocks. And then we have stockholders, and then we have money, profit. But if it's non-stock corporation, it means non-profit. We did not invest money. We invest in people. Invest in people. Invest in their minds, in their hearts, in their feelings. Invest in humanity. Invest in research, academic life. Invest in many ways, in many things. And this is what we call it non-profit, non-stock corporation. But despite this, we do have voting system. We do have a voting system. Because we need to understand how things can be managed, how we can run such a company. We cannot just leave it like this. We need a management board. We need some people who can manage such a company. So what we have in corporations, we have some privilege, some advantages. Someone can you read it? Anyone? Go. Anyone? Yeah, go. From here, corporation.
Corporations comprise a collective of individuals with a distinct legal status and with a special.
Okay. Now, corporations have all of these. Have some members. Corporations have not only members. They do have sometimes the individuals, what we call them members or shareholders, stockholders. And thus the corporation would have a distinct legal status. A distinct legal status. Now, we're not talking about the stockholders or the members or the individuals. No, distinct, I mean by distinct status, it's for the company, for the corporation. And privilege, because it has its own name. It can deal, can buy, can sell, can make an activity like human being, not provided here to ordinary unincorporated business. We have شركات المساهمة وغير مساهمة. Unincorporated اللي هي غير مساهمة, like in partnership. فيش فيها مساهمة. We have partners. We have partners. By this we can see, we can understand, we have individuals, members, shareholders, stockholders, who are investing their money in such type of corporations. Then those what we call them the owners. So the owners are, who are the owners? Who are the owners? Yeah? In corporations. Shareholders. What do you think? Who can manage? Who can run? Who can govern? Easy. We have election or not? We can have election. We have two types, two legal systems in the world. In most countries, we have something called board of directors. But this board of directors, would be elected by shareholders. Now we have in most of the world controlled here, corporation is determined by board of directors, elected by shareholders. How the election can be? Vote. How many votes each shareholder would have? According to? Okay, that's half of the answer. Well, look, if you have a question like this, saying how many votes, it depends. It's not about, it depends, first of all, on the type of the company. If it's non-profit company, non-stock company, then every member would have only one vote, only. Anyone have one vote. But if it's a profit company, stock company, then no, it depends on how much money you invest. Because non-profit, we don't invest the money, we invest in ourselves. Even we do have sometimes some type, they call them shares, but they're not real shares. But in stock companies, profit companies, votes depends on the amount of money we invest. We can't have it like units. Each unit, let's say that each unit would be £10,000. 10. So if you have invested £10,000, you're going to have one vote. If you invested £100,000, you have 10 votes. So it means we cannot have equal votes. It's not fair that I invest £500,000 and you invest only £20,000. We're going to have the same shares. No. Again, even here, even to be elected to run for this board, we have to have a minimum amount of money. I mean, this all depends on the article of establishment, اللي هو عقد التأسيس. Depends on the bylaw of the company. It tells you exactly what would happen. Look at the internal system, bylaw. It tells you things, how we can do it, how can we run the election. If I would like to run for the board of directors, to elect myself, then I would have a minimum amount of money. Like, we cannot open the door for anyone. No. We can state in the internal system that anyone would like to run for this position, this person would have at least invested £500,000, at least. Or maybe £20,000. It depends on the bylaw, it depends, but we have to have minimum amount of money. Everything have to be set down in the article of establishment, عقد التأسيس. Fine? In some jurisdictions, such as Germany, they don't have the same way. I mean, a few countries, they don't have the same system. They have an extra point. They have two main layers. They don't have only one election, they have twice. They have two boards. Yeah, number one, what they have, first of all, they have supervisory board. And this board would elect the managing board. Now, supervisory board is... No, it's not. Supervisory, it's not. It consists of, to call that co-determining system in which half of this supervisory board is from representative of employees. في ممثلين على العمال. Half of this board. And the other half is elected. And they would vote for the managing board. So the managing board is equal to the board of directors. Equal to that. And this is a unique system, and it can be in only few countries, like in Germany. And it's a bit complicated because you have to have many factors. You're not going to have direct election. It's kind of indirect way, and consisting for two layers. Layer number one is supervisory board, and layer number two is the higher with the managing board. Now this managing board, they can select, or the board of directors, they can select the president and the vice president and other positions to be appointed in such corporations, they have to be elected in between the board of directors. Fine? Some countries, not only in some countries, it's not only that voters or shareholders can have seats on the board of directors. If you imagine that we have 9 or 11 members of the board of directors, they can represent shareholders. These are elected, or those people were elected by the shareholders. Now, in such situation, the shareholders or the board of directors can act on behalf of the company, can act on behalf of the shareholders, isn't it? Yes, yes. Now, in some places, some countries, we do have sometimes the creditors, like banks, such as a bank, they can have some control over the company. Sometimes banks can have control over the company, and this can be in certain situations if the bank itself or the financial society are creditors for that company. How they can guarantee their money? A bank give the company £2 million. How the bank can guarantee their money?
The bank have some control in this corporation because
Yes.
money.
Imagine that we have our company. This is our company. This is our corporation, and we lend £5 million from the bank. How the bank can guarantee the money? The bank would have some guarantees, of course, which can be some assets. They can have some guarantors, sponsors, and at the same time, some banks in some countries, they can take seats, مقعد, where? In the board of directors. So they can watch, they can supervise, they can monitor everything, because decisions are made only at the level of board of directors. Because most likely in such corporations in which we have millions of shareholders, not even have thousands of shareholders, not everyone can know exactly what's happening. Only board of directors can run, can manage, can do everything on behalf of everybody. Now the banks would include the banks would want to have some control, would take the lead, because they want to see what would happen to their money. All what they have in their mind is to look after their money. And this is the common case in here. Like some jurisdictions, what jurisdictions? ولايات قضائية، أماكن اللي فيها قانون بسري. Such as in Germany and Japan, this is a standard. It's something common in which banks can take seats on the board of directors. But this is not the case in USA and UK, in which banks are not allowed, because they can influence decisions. You know, board of directors, 9 people, 10 people, 11 people, whatever, that number, they can make decisions. If you have the bank on that board of directors, they can influence, they can affect decisions made by such companies. And this is not allowed in the UK and in the USA. There's something I mentioned before, I'm just going to say it again, which is called residual interest. Again, talking about the ownership and the control. When we have liquidation, there's something I mentioned at the beginning. When we have liquidation of any company, then the money can be divided between, first of all, we have the priority. The money can be paid for the assets and the money which is left behind in that company can be paid for the creditors. Anything left behind can be divided between shareholders. And this is what we call it, why we call it here, residual interest. It's underlined here. ما تبقى had a residual interest. And this is should the corporation end its existence, members are the last to receive the money, the members or the shareholders, the assets. They come after, following creditors and others with interest in the corporation. Do you get it? Fine. And this is why some scholars say, well, this makes the corporation a little bit risky. Okay. Of course, now will end its own control. Yeah. Now, saying here, this is why some people say because creditors can get up with liquidation at the time of liquidation. By the way, liquidation is a type of bankruptcy. Liquidation is a bankruptcy. Here, type of bankruptcy, because we have in bankruptcy, الإفلاس, we have two types. We have liquidation, تصفية, and we have sometimes reorganization, إعادة الجدول. Now, if we have a liquidation, then we have to pay creditors, then we have to pay members or shareholders, that if we have any money left behind for them, sometimes we may not have anything left. And this is why some think that this is a risky business. This is a little bit dangerous. What do you think? Is it or is it not? Do you think corporation business is risky or safe? To invest your money, would you invest in a corporation? Would you invest in a partnership? Which one is risky? Yes. Is? I mean, each one of them have advantage and disadvantage.
Both can be risky.
Yes.
In corporations, after there is no residual interest for the shareholders, they won't have the money, the investment back. So it's risky for them. The partnership, they will lose their investment.
And this does not happen often. In only some cases we have such situation, liquidation. But most likely companies make a profit. Corporation make a profit. And even if we have some risk, we have advantage. The advantage is the limited liability, which we have mentioned at the beginning, and I explained it in 1 or 2 slides, saying that we have a limited liability, and because of that limited liability, we make it safe to reduce the loss. The potential loss will not exceed the money we invest. Let's make it even better than other entities to invest the money in. Anyway, we have to go to the next point. I was expecting something, but formation. How can we form corporation? Moving to this point, talking about formation. How can we form a corporation? In the past, it was easy to form a company or corporation. In the past, it was not easy, because to have corporation, usually that needed a special charter. You have to have a special charter for each corporation. But nowadays, it's so easy. We have something called company law, and this company law will be applicable to all types of companies in any country. And under company law, we have some types of companies. You can choose the type you like. You can look at the advantage and disadvantage for each entity, and then you can apply the type you like. And first step we can start with, it's called registration. We have to have something called article of establishment, the name of the company, the amount of money invested, the type of the business, the location, the agent, and the board of directors. Everything have to be set at the beginning. We have to identify exactly what we need and what we have to do in the future, and we can identify all what we said here, in addition to the location, address, and the agent, and people who can manage such company, even if it's going to be only for a short time until we have election then we have to identify these points and have them in something called article of establishment or articles of incorporation, which can lay out the nature, what type of company, what we're going to do exactly. Is it food? Is it going to be electronic? Would it be service, information? What type of business, the nature of that business has to be identified. This is the most important thing. In addition to the stock, the amount of money we have to invest, it's something really important. We have to identify it. Sometimes some companies cannot know exactly how much, but they have to estimate. We have to have the estimation, evaluation. We say like we have the potential amount of money we invest, £2 million, £3 million. Despite the fact we might change in the future, we might increase this amount of money, but at least at the beginning, we have to identify the amount of money, the stock we would like to invest. In addition to the names and addresses of directors, because we have to know exactly who will be responsible for such company, who can take the responsibility, who can make decisions of such company at the beginning. Once we have this company registered, once we have this company here approved by the Minister of Economics, then we have to move to the next stage. The next stage would be bylaw. We have to have the internal system, which is something important to be able to run the company, to be able to manage, to be able to work in the market. We have to have our bylaw, the internal system. We have to have it with something here, have to be consistent with the law, with the company law. Jurisdiction in which corporation operate. If it was made in Palestine, then the bylaw of that company have to be consistent with the Palestinian company law. If we would like to have a company in Egypt, then the bylaw of that company have to be in accordance with Egyptian law, and so on and so forth. If the corporation would like to act outside its state, what happened? If we have a company in Palestine, but this company would have to have its own second branch in Cairo.
The country that
Yes. Would you think that we're going to use the same law in Palestine in Egypt? No. If we can use, we don't have to use the same bylaw, the same company. Let's say that company, whatever company, have its own bylaw in Palestine. It would use the same bylaw in Egypt. But this same bylaw, we have to amend it. ممكن نعدل عليه to be consistent with the Egyptian law. Because we cannot act outside the law in any country. We do have to respect the law in any country. The name, look at the name. Company have a name, corporation have a name, like you, like me. They have names. And this name has to be distinct. We should not have duplication. Like we do in each society here, in any society, we can have two people having the same name. But even those two people, despite the fact having the same name, they're not going to have the same ID number. You can have the first name, second name, the middle name. Even we do have sometimes two people have exactly the same two names, but we're going to have the ID number is not the same. We have to have something different. We have to distinguish between one and another. Any corporation would have its own distinct name. In the past, people used to have companies, corporation after the family name, and even up to now, most companies here in Palestine, they have family name, and even some of them have like their membership. If some friends, they can use one of the names of their friends. Family, they have the same family name, and so on and so forth. But we're not supposed to limit our potential names for the family. We can have the freedom today, nowadays, you have the freedom under jurisdictions as long as this is a distinct name, something new, something unique. Okay, it's fine. You can call your company anything you like, as long as this name is in you, and as long as it's important that this name does not conflict with the public interest. Public interest, I cannot call my company something which can be insult. No, this is not good. This is illegal. This, like, we do have sometimes in English, some words in English can be an insult in Arabic. The same word, because they can coincide. بيتزامنوا مع same word. We can pronounce it in Arabic, but can be an insult. Can be something not nice. So the name would have to be consistent with the public interest and have to be a distinct name. In Canada, some small corporations, because they have many corporations in Canada, they find it easy not to have a name. They find it easy to have number, and this is sale tax registration number. So you can call the company, your company can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 company or corporation. It can be a number. It can be a number, not a name, which is fine, which is okay. But in our society, our culture, it has to be a name, brand name, something new, something distinguished. So that name, because the name can attract the customer. And even not here, in most countries, in most places, the name, the brand name, and you know in Gaza here we have some names, like for example, Kazim, Ma'tuq. These are brand names, famous names. So the name itself can encourage customers to buy. In this slide here, we find it even next to the name of the corporation, next to the name of the company, you have to have something which is called corporation. Like, what's your name? Samiha? Samiha Co. Samiha Corporation, for example. In addition to the name itself, you have to identify exactly what type of company. Samiha Partnership, or Corporation, or Limited Liability Company. We have to look at these. Once we have at the end of this chapter, we look at the types. At the end of this chapter, we look at the types of entities. Now, if it's corporation, we can say Samiha Corporation or Samiha Co. CO. Dot. This is abbreviation, stands for corporation. And it depends sometimes on the language. In Palestine here, we have to have the name in Arabic, not in English. If you would like to add the name in English, it's fine. It's up to you. But you have to have it in Arabic. If it's in Hindi, in Hindi. I mean, if it's in India, it has, what do you call the language? It's Hindi. In English, it's called Hindi. In Pakistan, the language is Urdu. Anyway, I mean, it depends on the language. And some jurisdictions say this is not allowed. You cannot state next to the name of the company a company. You say Samiha Company. No, this is not allowed. Why? Because company is a wide name. Company here, you cannot use it alone. No. Because company includes limited liability company, limited company, partnership. We have 4 types of partnerships, and we have corporations. So we have many names. No. Thus, we cannot use the name company. We cannot use it. You have to identify exactly what type of company is it. What type. Last slide. I know too much today we have. But last slide, because we have to. We don't want to leave it. Okay, we'll leave this slide till next time. Thanks very much for your time, and I'm going to see you Tuesday, inshallah.